I just finished watching the brand new project from writer-director Zack Snyder, one of my favorite filmmakers, despite many of his flaws. Looking at you, Rebel Moon. But his newest project is something a little bit different. It's not a movie, it's a TV show. But not only a TV show, but an animated show called Twilight of the Gods. This brand new series on Netflix takes place in a Norse mythology universe. So we're talking about Thor, Odin, all of those characters. If you've played the new God of War games, you know what you're getting into. It follows this half-giant Sigrid as she's about to get married when something horrible happens and it sets her off on a quest to slay the god Thor. It's a revenge story. It is essentially God of War, except the original God of Wars, right? The original ones where he's trying to kill Ares in Greek mythology, except now set in Norse mythology. Pretty much the same concept. But it's a gigantic quest about this character having to get the gang together, and they have to go on this big adventure to kill Thor, to kill the biggest and most powerful god in this universe, unless it's Odin. Right? Big question. And along the way, she meets a bunch of characters, she meets a bunch of gods, mainly Loki, who centers to be kind of the main kind of god character that's not Thor, that's sort of helping them on their journey, but can he be trusted? This is a version of Loki that's very different from, say, the Marvel version, also very different from the God of War version, but this is very much the Loki from mythology, the trickster, the can we really trust him? And there's a lot of complexities there. And overall, this was an 8-episode season of television that I had a really good time with. There is a lot to really love about this. There are a lot of things that I really did enjoy about the show. There are also some things that I think kind of hold it back. But I think overall, this is a success for Zack Snyder. A big win that he sort of needed after Rebel Moon was a gigantic stinking pile of dog poop. So some stuff I like about Twilight of the Gods. First things first, the animation. The animation here is very, very simple. It kind of reminds me of the animation style from Invincible for a multitude of reasons, but mainly because this show is incredibly graphic. This show does not pull its punches when it comes to its violence. It is the most brutally violent thing I have seen from Zack Snyder since 300, and this whole thing kind of feels like in the vein of that. The killing, the kills themselves, and the action is brutal, and it does not hold back. The sexual aspects are very, very sexual, and it also does not hold back on that. That might be a red flag to you. You might not like the show because of that, and other people might really like it just to see how far Zack Snyder was able to push it with Netflix somehow allowing this to be made. It's really, really brutal, really graphic, really dark, and if that's the type of Zack Snyder stuff you love, it's all here. I also think the depiction of this world is so, so cool. Of course, this Norse mythology, this is a world that we've really kind of played around with a lot in the last decade. Through Marvel, of course, getting Thor and Loki, and I know those are the superhero versions of the mythological characters, and they're very, very different. This is, but then we also got the God of War version, which is very similar to this one, if we're going to be honest. Of course, God of War and God of War Ragnarok being two huge games that took place in that world, and this is a similar version to that in the sense that the gods are kind of dicks, and Thor is kind of a bloodthirsty maniac. It's very similar, but this version of this world is colorful, it's vibrant, it's beautiful. The gods almost radiate. They're evil, kind of, but in a way that's sort of understandable. Thor, the character himself, is one of the most intimidating characters, but also well-written characters that Zack Snyder's put out as like a villain essence. Just his eyes, the way they're animated, he looks like this guy who is absolutely insane and just wants to kill things. But as you get to the core of why he's like that, it makes a lot of sense. I really enjoyed the world and the lore that's built into it. I also like the journey, the music, and everything, just the whole production of this whole build-up to this large battle in the finale. It felt almost Lord of the Rings-esque. This felt like Snyder's Lord of the Rings. The only thing that would have been better if he was able to do this in live action. The show does suffer from some Zack Snyder-isms. First things first, there's slow motion here. A good amount of it. It's animation! Why is there so much slow motion? There is a good amount of slow motion. You see it in like the first episode immediately. Another problem is a problem that we really had with Rebel Moon, which is, and I think also Army of the Dead, and it's kind of assembling a team of characters where there's like two interesting characters and the rest of them are just forgettable. It's a big problem with this show where you have this large team that's assembled, and I couldn't tell you the names of, like, the majority of the characters. They're just kind of boring. Some of them really stand out, and then others are just, I don't know. I would rather have a more character-centric, small, team-focused story. Something kind of like Blue-Eyed Samurai, which came out last year, which is a much smaller ensemble of characters, but felt so much grander and bigger and well-written. Even though the stories are somewhat similar, this one, I just felt like the cast of characters was too big, and I just could only get myself hooked into, you know, the main character and her plot and her husband and Loki and Thor. That's pretty much it. I also just thought the ending was really unsatisfying. I did not know that this was going to be a series that's looked to be more than one season. I went in thinking this is a limited series. It's one story, beginning to end, and the whole time I went through with that mindset, and it's not that. This is clearly meant to be continued, and because of that, I was not very satisfied by the ending, which is clearly not tying up the story, but waiting for the next part of it. But overall, I really enjoyed Twilight of the Gods. I think there's a lot to enjoy here. If you're a big Zack Snyder fan, you're probably going to love this. If you're not a big Zack Snyder fan, you're going to find a lot to dislike about this one. But I do think this is probably his best effort since the whole Snyder Cut debacle. It's a big step forward from Rebel Moon, and I hope that maybe when it comes to his live-action stuff, he'll lean more into stuff like this. I love his mythological movies, his darker, brutal films. I love 300. I really love Watchmen, which isn't, like, graphically as brutal as 300, but it's still sort of a mythological comic book film. It's really dark, and I want him to do more shit like that. Less stuff like Star Wars, but not Star Wars. I will give Twilight of the Gods a 3.5 out of 5. It's a solid watch, something you can watch in like one night. Thank you guys for watching. Make sure to like this video, subscribe for more, turn on notifications. I'll see you in the next one.